Hi folks, my name's Jeff Rugrock, all things prints this semester. Just want to talk a little bit about isometric perspectives, but before I begin, I just wanted to give you some of the variables. This is by no means extensive, but it gives you an idea of all of how we see and how we like to draw things in their most accurate form, and also a more creative multi-view isometric projections. And then we'll get into isometrics, and the process that I use happens to be based on the detail box. Again, it's not exhaustive. There are other ways of doing it, but I'll show you some detail box ideas that you can use or not use. So first off, we are binocular. We have a couple of eyes, and they tend to make things, because they're separate from each other, our sight lines tend to come together, which makes everything look like it's eventually overlapping. That's why a parallel set of railroad tracks close in on themselves in the distance and become smaller and smaller looking. We don't often draw like that. Were you to draw a set of railroad tracks, you'd probably draw them orthographically. So the distance between the rails, if it's 6 feet, would remain 6 feet all the way across when you draw it. Different from what we see. This particular drawing happens to be of a fitting allowance with your hand threads, your engaged threads, your imperfect threads, and all that jazz. Even running threads and fitting allowance are all on there. Anyways, the last one, and this is where we're going to focus on today, isometrics, which is three-dimensional views. So you would see the top, the top of the pipe, the side view or elevation view, and perhaps an end view as well. And there's different ways of talking about that, but you would generally cover off about 3 different sides. It is an artistic human eye view, but minus the narrowing effects of depth perception, which I showed you on the railroad tracks. But it is artistic, remember that. There is actually an isometric scale rule that allows you to be a little bit more accurate, because isometric lines should actually be a little bit shorter than their orthographic counterparts. We don't bother with that. So think of it as artistic. So you have 3 views drawn in 2 dimensions, or a single dimension, really a flat piece of paper. It is a quick artistic representation that easily depicts most aspects of a piping system. So as plumbers, we love this one. If you can visualize an isometrics, you're doing really, really well. But it doesn't always do everything. There are some tricks that have to come up. There are a few basic rules, but the main one to remember to get started is that horizontal aspects are always drawn at an isometric 30-degree angle. So you will need a 30-60 set square or triangle. And again, they seldom account for true dimensions. They range between 17 to 23% shorter, depending on which lines, or longer, depending on which we're talking about. So again, keep in mind they're artistic. Irregular isometric lines, and I'm talking here mostly about diagonal lines, so 45-degree offsets, require a higher degree of skill or technology. Of course, computers can do all this for us nowadays. Isometric tools. So there's the 30-60 set square you will need. You will need your creativity and imagination. If you have a sliding T-square for on your desktop or tabletop, and then if you wish, you could actually have an isometric scale rule. I'm not getting into that, and it's not required for this course. Those are the basics. We're going to be focusing on 3 principal views, which is the top plan view or bird's eye view, a front elevation, or a front elevation and a side elevation. And the side elevation can be left or right. Front view is a dominant view, or if it's not dominant, at least shows you the vast majority of information you want to convey. That's how you define a front view. It's often the biggest one, but not always. The 3 general rules are that vertical aspects of an object are drawn vertically. You'll see me often writing vertical equals vertical. Horizontal aspects are to be drawn at 30 degrees. So you'll hear me say something along the lines of horizontal equals 30. And irregular aspects, which for us is I'm talking here about 45 degree diagonal lines, pipelines, that are lying flat or standing straight up. And these are non-isometric. They're often drawn horizontally, vertically, or even at 60 degrees. So watch out for that. I'll give you some tricks for figuring that one out. Well, I guess here's some of the tricks right here. So this is what I'm referring to as a detail box, and it's what helps me place my piping. I like this strategy because most rooms are built in the shape of a box, and your piping has to go in that room, which is a box. So I like using this one. It's by no means exhaustive. There are options, but I'm going to talk about this. So we're going to have talk about orthographic box drawings. Often they're drawn using lightly weighted lines. In this case, they're using hidden lines. And it just provides a basis for creating piping systems. They're just a great way to start. But you can also use a detail box to isolate a section of a drawing, and I'll show you that one as well. And there are examples of this. If we're working on the Blueprints portfolio this year, you'll find examples of all this in the Blueprints portfolio, which you have to draw. Alrighty. So I have some steps here for you to use, and I'm going to kind of show you how to use these steps, but as you move along, you may wish to drop these as you get more proficient at it. I am going to do a little bit of drawing here. I'm afraid I don't have a straight line tool, so my angles are going to be way off and all that sort of thing, but it'll give you a good sense. I'm going to use, maybe I'll use like a light blue. There's no gray here from the color, so I'm going to use a light blue for my detail box. Anyways, so steps. Decide which elevation perspective is the broadest, often the front elevation, and the approximate how broad it is. And you want that to, sometimes you got, scale comes again later, but eventually you're going to want to be able to place it on the drawing in the right spot. So I like to say that if you're drawing a rectangle, you start on the bottom left and draw up towards the right, or the other side. But you'll see what I mean by that in a moment. But you locate that point along the bottom of the drawing. So let's see if this blue shows up. So I'm going to do a point right there. There we go. Then, beginning slightly above this point, draw an isometric arrow downward. Use initial or hidden lines, so keep it fairly light. That's why I'm using the blue. Maybe I can try an even lighter blue. You draw the vertical portion of the arrow at true vertical, and draw the arrowhead, or what will be your horizontal portions, you draw at 30 degrees. So let's see how this goes. So vertical section, nope. So that would be your vertical section, and then you have a horizontal section. So you can tell my broad side is going off towards the right, and I'll do my narrow side here. And you can overdraw these. You can way overdraw these if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. Next up, to determine the appropriate scale, and you have to do some exploring here. Sometimes you have to erase your lines and start again, which you've seen me already do. But then, along each point of the arrow, mark the line dimensions for your height, width, and depth. So now I'm going to change over to black ink, and let's say this is my height, this is my depth, and this is my width or length. And there's different ways of saying this, right? That's it. That's how you start a box. Then believe it or not, you just fill it in. So I'm going to carry on with the black here. Actually, I'm going to carry on with the blue. So you draw that up. Draw that up. Then you can, once you know exactly what size your box is going to be, you can start to finish it. So you stop where you connect. And remember, you're using you'll be using a triangle for all of this. But you've essentially measured once. And remember, you measure once and then just draw the bejeebers out of it. And I guess it's important to remember too that once you know where your line's going to stop, you can go to the dark, and then you can embolden your lines when you're done to create your detail box. This happens to be a rectangle. And you go over everything. Oops. That's not what it was after. In some of the learning platform, in the video conference thing called Bongo, I can actually have a straight line to it. Then you can take out your initial lines. There you go, and you're left with the detail box. Again, these two lines should be parallel. They're not quite parallel, and they're not very straight either. You can use hidden lines to connect up the back portions if you wish. Right? So this would be a box that you can't see. This line's disappearing behind my top right side here. But anyway, so that's kind of the steps. You start with that arrowhead and then off you go. It takes a while to get to know where to start. Obviously, if I was drawing a square object, I would put my starting point, my starting arrow, more to the middle of my drawing space. Next up. Okay, there is another kind of, well, I should say this, an orthographic or isometric box drawing, three-dimensional, is just one type of detail box. It's obviously drawn using lightly weighted or hidden lines, so they can be erased easily or used easily. You can open the box up, you can close it, different variations. And it does provide a basis for creating a piping drawing. In this particular case, I would not necessarily recommend a three-dimensional isometric box, but one that is for a drainage plan only. And that's what we've got going here. This particular detail box is just a dashed line on a much larger drawing. I only have a small bit of it here, but it is like a cut line where you remove this section and create a bigger drawing for a plumbing plan where you have your drains and your water piping on it. Anyways, so this particular isometric box would just be a flat baseline, so the floor of a building, if you will, or the floor outline of a building or room or area. In this case, we're going to do an area. What you have to know before you try and do this, you have to locate where your services are. So what they've got here is they've got a 2-inch cold water line, 1.5-inch hot water line, and a 3/4-inch hot water recirc line, and they all just end. Right, you can see the break lines there. So they end here at the edge of the detail box. Same with the sanitary sewer. And you would need to know, when you're going to do an isometric, turn this into an isometric plan, you need to know the distances. So you'd have to mark the distance from the corner of the box to the sanitary. You'd want to know the distance from the corner of the box to the cold water, hot water, and the recirc line. So you'd have to measure those distances, and then when you go to this next plan, the plumbing plan, or drawing M2, which stands for mechanical drawing number 2, you can then locate that on the detail box and start doing your drawing. So let me show you what that looks like. So here it is here. You've got your pipe coming in for the I'm going to do the sanitary, but there's your cold, hot, and return lines, and this happens to be your sanitary line. So to take that detail box from earlier, which is essentially the outline of this drawing, we're very close to it. Let's see what I can do here. And again, I'm sorry for the my mouse. I'm doing this drawing with my mouse, and it's of course terrible. So there we go. So that would be the isometric box. Of course, if you wanted to, you could turn it into a box. You could do the height. You could do the height of it, no problem, and connect that all up as well. I'm not going to do that. But if you like the isometric box, you could do that, and it's very helpful. In fact, I'm going to leave this one up, and I'll show you how it can be so helpful. Anyway, so the focus of what I'm doing would be on that sanitary drain, and I told you to mark and measure where the drain pipe comes into this room. So that's right here on the drawing. Then you can start drawing your piping. Okay, I missed my mark. And this looks like a shower here. So I'll go over to the shower. Put a little P-trap in there for the shower. And then this looks like a sauna or something. I can't quite read it from here. And I'm not scaling any of this, right? So it's a little bit funky looking. And then this might be a floor drain, and this other one might be a clean out. So if I had to guess, now I have to erase this. Yep, I was right. So this floor drain just comes off. And it would also have a P-trap on it. And then you have a clean out that just comes up through the floor. So there you go. That's how you would use a detail box for something like this. I've come to the end of my room. Do recall, hey, it's not working. I'm cleaning this up a little bit so I can show you. So this is the section I've drawn here in isometric. And of course you could carry on and draw this one as it goes down the whole building. But again, you're using this detail box to find all your measures. So that would, sorry. So this would be the shower, the sauna, a floor drain, and just a clean out. And then this would be the branch, horizontal branch that goes down the length of the building and finds the rest of your way. Now, I promised you I'd tell you how you might use this vertical line. So if you would, imagine this is the top of the room, and I'm just going to do the back wall here. But if you wanted to, you could do all the way around, right? And create that entire detail box. Should have chosen another color. Anyways, and you've got, I believe it was a cold water line that you would measure and mark. And then you had a hot water line that you could measure and mark along that same from the corner over. And now you're not in the floor. Here you crossed over the floor. Now you're up in the ceiling. And there's also a hot water recirc line. So we'll do two different colors red. So you can measure and mark those. And then as you see, those come into the middle of the room and also travel. They don't come in so far, but they also travel down the length of the room. So what color do I have up here? So we could do the blue. And then that line would also, but now you're in the ceiling. And again, my mouse, maybe should try a different mouse. And then the recirc line goes beside that. So you have those three lines, and now they're going across the ceiling. And those water lines, I don't know exactly, it's very, very hard to see, but I would suggest that there is a cold water line coming across here and would drop down for that first bank of toilets and showers. There, now and it would come out the wall. Anyway, so that gives you a sense of what you can use these drawings for. And this type of detail box. So whether you build it up or just leave it flat. For the drains, you just generally leave your detail box flat and you can use it that way. So I'm not going to get into this particular slide, but you do have some drawings to do for me. And I'm going to be looking for those done. It depends on whether this is online or in class. If it's in class, you'll most likely be drawing the classroom for me. If it's online, I've got some isometric prints in a blueprint portfolio. Also, you could do something from inside the room. So in this particular case, I'm going to pull this bottom right section out of the drawing and do a print of it, which means I have to, in my mind's eye, I've got to flip this around so that I'm standing here looking into that corner. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually turn this whole thing around in my mind's eye. And when you do this, you have to do very similar to a detail box, but you're just going to draw that back inside corner. So what was hidden lines earlier is now going to be showing, and you're going to be your dominant. So let me show you what that looks like. So here we go. So this is that bottom right corner of the blown up plumbing drain plan, M2. And I have, in reality, I have another detail box here if I wish. In fact, there's boxes inside of boxes, right? So you could cordon off any section of this. I could do just the toilets if I wanted to and create an inside corner here, but I'm going to go for this bottom right and see what we can do with that. Wish me luck. So when you're drawing a detail box, I am going to do a typical isometric arrow. Yep. In this case, I'm doing it upward facing. And again, this isn't really 30 degrees. And if you wanted to, you could put some cut lines here. So the walls that I'm drawing, and these are walls, are right here. So I have a drain pipe. This is a floor sink or a mop sink, which sits, again, another detail box if you will. That mop sink sits right here. If you wanted to draw the height of it, it'd be about 1 foot tall. And the drain would be in the center of it. So there you go. There's our sink, there's our corner. And again, my fixture actually became a detail box as well. My drain, I put it in the center. So I found the halfway mark here. And I found the on the floor. Found the halfway mark here and just transferred those or projected those lines over to my drain. And then I'm going to have a P-trap under here. And then this drain just goes parallel to this wall right here. Right? It goes parallel to that wall, so I'll stay parallel with that wall. And then this looks like it could be a floor drain next to it. So we have a floor drain and a floor sink. Well, I'm going off the page here, but there's another P-trap for my floor drain. And happy as can be. My hot and cold water pipe are back here against this wall. So you could, and they come from, they're parallel to this right side wall. So you could come up the wall. Then they turn at some point and go this way. So that's this pipe here. And the hot water would run beside it. And off you go. So this would be the hot water. There you go. That gives you some idea of how to do the inside of a room. That's it. Again, there's some projects for you to do depending on this is an online course or whether it's in class. My name's Jeff Rugrock, all things prints this semester. I'll see you next time. Oops.